Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 226 for June 9th, 2025, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Our topic of tonight is a designer spotlight on Mark Simonich, one of the best designers working today. We are also drinking the Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve. Thank you, Scott, you know who you are, for sending me this, bottled at 43%. And this is finished in rum casks, which is generally a finish that I kind of like, at least from the examples I've had so far. We are clipping Advanced Squad Leader, although next week we might be tidying up Congress of Vienna instead. I still have to look at the counters and see what I have to do. They definitely need to be organized, and all that has to be done by Origins, which we will be talking about this evening very briefly. This will just be like an update as to what's going on. So that is not our main topic for the evening. I do have a bunch of news, none of which is like super duper major news, but some of you will be interested in some of this news because some of it's pretty interesting. So before we get started, let me say that please like the video if you have not done so already. Thumbs up. It is appreciated and helps out the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. And super chats and super stickers are on, so it is a way to support the channel as well as to get your comment highlighted so that I will respond to it. Otherwise, I might miss something. I will not miss a highlighted comment, like this one, for example. Jeff T, thanks so much for the support. It is much appreciated. What else do I have to say before we do the roll? Where's my roll call thing? See, folks, we're super disorganized here. We'd be more disorganized if Dan was in charge. But let's say hello to Aaron, Dennis, Alistair, Logie, Bob Meyer, Brian Jarvis, Carl Fung, Charles Latora, Chet Bell, Christoph de Klerk, Dale Brady, Daniel Silverthorne, Danny Seckery, Dave Poirier, David Zell, DJ Flippy, EL, E4 Airman from sunny Southwest Ohio. It is gross here today. I don't know how it is down there. Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, Groucho Marx, Henry Hartman, HON644 New, the legend himself, Fucko is here, James Whitmer, Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Jeff Edwards, Jeff T, as we already saw, Jeffrey Wesovich, Joe Hammond, Joe Perez, Joe Mentum, John Clark, Joseph Caparula, welcome to the show, Ken Hartland, welcome to the show, or welcome back, I should say, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant Manders, Mark Hodgkinson, Marty Sample is here, Meandering, Michael Karlowski, Michael Pinka, Neil Bedke, Panzer Division Lair, Paul Dangle, Perry Spropoulos, Phil Hatfield, Phil, welcome back, Ray Musselman, Rob Taylor, Ryan Huard, Sean Mulroy, Sean Sullivan, Stacking Limit is here, Stephen Rochelle Stigler, newly anointed game designer of the month, is here, Todd Cox, and Vicky, welcome back to the show. And I saw Mark Herman in there earlier, so Mark, thanks for stopping by. So, let's get into the news first. Let's see if this actually works. There we go, it works. Thank you for working today. All right, so I have Charles S. Roberts Awards news. That was weird. Okay, I have Charles S. Roberts Awards news. The voting is done. The Hall of Fame Committee has done its deliberations. We will have the awards announced in the next week and a half or so. Just to give everybody a... YouTube ads are getting worse. I can confirm that. I have mid-roll ads off on all my videos. There might be like one old one where I turned it on without knowing what it was yet. But by and large, mid-roll ads are off on here. It's not my fault if YouTube wants to fuck that up. Wargame Ramble, thanks for stopping by, especially from Gettysburg. You got cool scenery to go see, although I guess it is a bit late for scenery at this point. I am like 1/3 Scottish, so I have to have bagpipes contractually at the beginning of the show. So moving on from this. Next piece of news, and we actually just missed a developer stream on this. Mr. President, the digital adaptation of the Gene Billingsley board game from GMT, is coming out in a digital version, and the demo became available today. If you want to see this, I would recommend doing it this way, and this will maybe help you decide whether you want the digital version of the game, the board game version of the game, or both, I guess. But the full game is not yet available. This is on Steam. It is called just Mr. President, and you'll know it when you see it. I do like the game. I have some video on Mr. President, and it's pretty neat. But I did unload my copy due to the large quantity of errata. But I am definitely going to pick up the digital version of Mr. President, because I think that is a very natural way to play this game, and I think it was a great choice by whoever decided to make a digital adaptation of this particular game. I would be delighted to see whatever GMT would like to do in the future, but this is a good choice for the moment. So, no. My personal goal is to get it done before Origins, so I do not have to worry about it during Origins. There will, however, be a Charles S. Roberts Awards panel at the War College at Origins, which I will be participating in. So bear that in mind if you are going to be at Origins. I have been thinking about this. If there's some kind of family plan, I might actually end up going for that at some point, but I don't want to spend the extra money right now. So he has, in fact, tried to do so, and I have never actually just said no. I just think now it is not the time for that. So I get a lot of Noble Knight ads on YouTube myself, but that's understandable because I'm on their website friggin' constantly. Speaking of news and Noble Knight games, I have a new banner this evening that reflects, except it didn't manage to upload, that reflects our new campaign. So let's talk about this as soon as it friggin' uploads. The current campaign is the campaign... Let me turn this off for a minute. There we go. Very irritating. All right, the current campaign is the campaign for Case Blue. This is going to be a giveaway. We're at 40% right now. Whenever we have the funds to push the button, and Noble Knight usually has a copy of Case Blue available somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 to $1,200. As soon as we have that amount, we will snag it instantaneously. It'll be delivered here, and then I will give it away on this show. There will be at least a week and hopefully 2 weeks notice between pushing the button at figure 2 weeks and the actual giveaway. So folks will have plenty of notice. It will be given away during this show at exactly the regular time. And I'm got some other giveaways in the pipeline as well that may actually happen before Case Blue. And I'm talking specifically about Forgotten Battles, which is likely to happen sometime in June, sometime this month. And that's going to be a big giveaway too. So stay tuned for that. Back to... Pull this down. All right, next up is... Carl Fung has graciously sent me a link to the latest blog post on his blog over at Board Game Geek. I will first provide a link to Carl's blog, which you all probably ought to be reading anyway if you're into any of these game series, and if you're here, there's a good chance of that. So, I hope not. But we'll see. No, it's a fantastical alternate version. No, it's $1,200 for Case Blue. Unpunched. This is unpunched. My target is an unpunched copy. That said, we'll see what happens, and if that's why it's coming here first, because I want to check it for problems and ensure that whoever the lucky winner is will get a complete copy of Case Blue, whether it's punched or not. So, all right. So, State of the Gamers 2025. Once again, I have already put a link in the chat, so you can go check this out if you like. We are going to hit the highlights here and not necessarily read the entire thing, but there's quite a bit here. So, in Honcho news, Wig Graves has joined Carl as co-honcho for OCS, which is probably a good idea just logistically. Wig is, of course, a veteran designer in the Gamers ecosystem, and is a veteran OCS player. Chris Anthony is now the Line of Battle honcho, but that happened back in November 2024, and somehow I missed that. So that is happening. We'll talk about that. And then Lee Forrester is the honcho for SCS and TCS, and we have news for all of these systems here. So OCS, we have two main things that are going to probably be, one of these two things will probably be the next OCS game to, well, I could, Brant, but we're not doing it this week. So, and my Forgotten Battles is not yet fully punched. So that'll happen. All right, so cross-channel attack. This is the OCS Normandy game. I played this, but it was like 6 years ago. So I do not know where this is right now. The design is moving forward. Carl has spent some time finalizing the maps and has been reviewing and updating the counters. The D-Day anniversary, that's obviously not going to happen, but I would rather have a good game at the end than hit an arbitrary target date. So... and Carl, we will talk specifically about Inflection Point in a minute here, but it is being printed in the U.S., so says Carl. They did back that off. I'm not sure what buttons got pushed in there. So there you go. Mark is also the honcho for Army of the Potomac, which is also in final production, which is fantastic. So that will be one to keep a close eye on over at GMT. All right, so cross-channel attack. The other of the likely next games in the OCS series is the Hero City. Now, this is the third big, so it's really the fourth game in Tony's Ostfront series. This is the northern sector around Leningrad. This is one that I've seen it played multiple times. I have not played it. I have played Forgotten Battles already, and I liked it a lot. And I would be shocked if I did not like Hero City 2. They are all of the ones except Crimea are 4-map games. This is no exception. So it's going to be big, it's going to be dense, it's going to be a pretty typical OCS East Front experience, and it's going to be great with a relatively heavy amount of game-specific rules. All right, so Tony and Carl spoke recently, and he is prepping the completion of Hero City this year. That lines up with what Tony told me. He said he is adding some additional scenarios to cover the continuation war, which is great. I've already heard that from Tony as well. So as much as Carl would like to specify which one, it will either be Cross-Channel Attack or the Hero City, depending on which one gets turned in first. So I don't care. Personally, I will buy both games. So it's all fine. All right. Other OCS things in development. A Summer in Hell by Stefan Acquaviva, whose name I might not be pronouncing correctly, but there we go. I have played Stefan's previous OCS game, Hungarian Rhapsody, and liked it a great deal. This is about Kursk. This is a game that I think anybody who likes OCS will definitely be interested in. It's going to be a 4-map game. Now, here's the interesting thing, and some people are calling this Case Blue 2, and it kind of is, but it's kind of part of Case Blue 2, if you know what I mean. So, topically, revised edition of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 in Case Blue. So this is as far as I can tell, and Carl can correct me if I am full of shit. This sounds like what it's titled as, a new version of Enemy at the Gates with 4 maps. The original had 4 maps. The version of Enemy at the Gates that was in Case Blue had 4 maps, in addition to the other 6 maps that were in Case Blue. So this looks like just that section, but like a lot of the East Front action happens in this area. So this is going to be October 41 through May 43. Sounds like a huge pile of scenarios. So, and Wiggraves is working on this. So this is going to bring in stuff from GB2 and Case Blue, but it's going to be available, which will be fantastic. So this is super exciting. Obviously, this is a must-buy for me. So it is the full... Whoa. So how is it? So, okay. So Carl clarifies, this is the full GB2 and Case Blue. It says 4 maps here, so I don't know what I was supposed to think. So it will, in fact, contain more than 4 maps and will probably cost as much as a subcompact car. But if it's going to be all of this, so Case Blue is 10 maps, Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 is 6 maps, not all of which are full-sized. In the case of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, 3 of those maps are like 1/3 size or something like that. So this is going to actually be totally enormous. So, of course, they decided this as soon as I was going to obtain a copy and give it away. But still, it'll be... This is probably a little ways away, would be my guess. So we will see. 6-inch, 2 boxes. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. You could get all this material in 1 box. It's just going to probably need to be a 4-inch box. So, yeah, and don't be absolutely stunned if, and again, I'll let Carl weigh in on this, if this ends up being more than 1 individual box, right? It's sold separately. So, and Carl says it will be a while away, and that is my understanding as well. So, but it will it will be more expensive than free. I believe I can guarantee that at this point. Now we have to get into, and I say it that way because we're now talking about Dean's final designs. Okay, so inflection point. All materials are at the printer, so we should be seeing this getting shipped sometime in the next few weeks. We are already seeing returns of the detergent box. GMT has now done a couple of games in 4-inch boxes. There's a couple more coming. And Dan Versen Games, DVG has... Yes, DVG has done a couple of games in 4-inch boxes as well, one of which is the one that I've got in Field Commander Napoleon. Carl says, inflection point, hopefully by WBC. And I didn't pull this up in advance. AMMP has also announced a new ASL pre-order, which is Drop Zone. It's a bagged Saint Marie Dumont. Is that what it is? It's another Drop Zone, U.S. Airborne on, very early days of the invasion. It's going to be a standalone, but it's going to be in a bag and not a box. I forget what actually it was called, but it's like $40 and doesn't contain any counters, which frankly it doesn't need. We have plenty of counters. So the package will actually come shipped with tables. It might as well. The tables will be less expensive than the game. Is it Chef Dupont? It might be Chef Dupont. Okay. All right. So inflection point, highly anticipated by me. It is almost ready to go. There are 2 additional BCS games in active development and getting close right now. Danger Forward, which is the Gala Beachhead game. This is the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. It is a topic I am super interested in anyway, plus it's a BCS game, so I'll be buying this as well. And RVT War Games will be doing some introductory material tailored specifically to Danger Forward. And RVT War Games is a YouTube channel. In fact, here they are. I will throw RVT War Games a link to their channel in the chat. He's done a lot of stuff with Rule the Waves and stuff, but he also does some really good stuff. Some really good tactical analysis and how the combat works and stuff like that. Videos on BCS. So excellent channel. Everybody should be subscribed to this anyway. All right, next up is The Breaking Point. This is France 1940. This is the Sedan game, but it covers individual battles at Sedan, Stone, Dinant, Flavion, Monterme, Anu, and Gemblou. So all of those names were pronounced badly by me. This sounds great. Chef Boyardee, the original Chef Hector Boyardee was from Cleveland, by the way, and his restaurant that started the whole thing was in Cleveland's Little Italy neighborhood. So it better be a sturdy box, is all I can say. And Carl says it is Drop Zone Chef Dupont. All right, so with Inflection Point almost ready and Danger Forward hot on its heels, you'll have a good slate of BCS games in the near future. So this is probably, Inflection Point's coming, probably get another BCS game next year would be my guess. I have no recollection of who my high school French teacher was, to be completely honest. I do not remember that person at all. And nor do I remember much of the French that they taught me. So there was that. I believe it was a female teacher, but I could be mistaken about that. And of course, AeroCorps is on pre-order. And then next after these 2, though, will be BCS Market Garden, which I am just all over. Very happy to hear about that. All right. For Line of Battle. This is he's got another one of Dean's final designs. This is No Turning Back, the Battle of the Wilderness. 4 maps, 7 counter sheets. It hit its pre-order as the pricing was estimated before some other stuff occurred regarding tariffs. So they're going to need to work on that. But we should be seeing that before a horrendously long amount of time would be my guess. And the next up for Line of Battle is Inferno in the Bluegrass, designed by Nick Rosser, developer Chris Anthony. And this is the Battle of Perryville game that was talked about. And this looks like 2 maps. It is, in fact, 2 maps. And we don't have a huge high-resolution graphic here, but this is Perryville down here. So that's also going to be cool. Happy to pick that up as well. Next up is SCS. This is Lee Forrester's Bailiwick nowadays. Drive on Kharkov is being developed by Steve Newhouse. This is a 2-map game on 3rd Kharkov in 1943. So I think so too. That I find the line of battle maps to be generally very pleasing to the eye. I know there will be people who disagree that are here this evening, but I like the way they look. And certainly they are a big improvement over the put your eyes through a cheese grater experience of the early and even mid-period, really, Brigade Combat Series games. Or Civil War Brigade Series, I should say. All right, next up is Fallschirmjäger. This is the new edition of Fallschirmjäger. This is a pre-order, but it really kind of sounds like a new edition. Lee and Carl have been trying to cook up additional SCS designs. Submissions from designers have been scattered, but they have a good design to follow Drive on Kharkov, and they'll announce that in the fullness of time. TCS. This is the Tactical Combat Series. This is the game about marine battles in, I think they're all marine, well, I'm not sure they're all marine battles, but they're all battles tactical battles in Vietnam. I will buy this. Dave Friedrichs is the designer, Lee Forrester is the developer, and the battles in question are Operation Starlight, Operation Pegasus, Duk Lop, Hamburger Hill, and I missed one. Landing Zone X-Ray, that's the other one. So there's some good battles that we have heard of before, and it is Marines and U.S. Army. All right, and as Carl points out at the end, we do have Dean to thank for the wonderful designs that we will hopefully continue to see new games using for many years to come. And I like all of these series, so I will be just as happy as anybody if in 20 years we're talking about on Counterclipping Show 800 or whatever it would be, we're still talking about the latest OCS and TCS and VCS games. So that is the news out of MMP. And there is additional news that I forgot to mention out of GMT, which is that Seljuk, the latest in the Levian campaign series, is now at the printer. So we should be seeing that stuff before too much longer, assuming nothing blows up in the international shipping space again, which I would not necessarily bet on, but we'll see. Maybe it's settled down now. Anyway, I do have, before we get into the show topic, links for everybody. Here is a link to the Ardwulf's Lair Discord community, which is doing very well, and I am very happy with it. And if you would like to come in and participate in that conversation and lovely community, there is the link to that. For those of you who would like to get in on the RPG Digest, which is the new channel that I will be starting up after Origins, focused on role-playing games, here is a link to that on YouTube. We will see exactly what that content looks like after that. I'm not putting a lot of effort I'm not doing any actual content yet until after Origins. So, but, you know, a content plan is in development. So, Alistair is waiting for a quote from Noble Knight for a big pile of games. And let me get back to this very briefly to touch on that. So the campaign, the way the campaign works is there is a link in the video description right now for that is a Noble Knight affiliate link for me. If you buy stuff through that link, if you were going to buy that anyway, cool. If you use the link, I appreciate it, because then I get a certain percentage, 10 or whatever it is percent, in store credit, and then when that store credit builds up to be able to buy Case Blue, that is when we push the button on Case Blue. So use the affiliate link, folks. It is much appreciated and also helps support the channel. So let's pull this down. And we will, of course, I'm not sure I said this, big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair and to our official sponsor at Noble Knight Games, and we'll hear from them in something like 30 minutes. All right, so let's hop over to the game designs of Mr. Mark Simonitch. I do think Mark doesn't do a lot of interviews. I'd love to get him on the show, but we have not managed to make that happen yet. Well, maybe it will happen someday. The first release that Board Game Geek lists for Mark Simonitch is this one, The Legend Begins. And I believe this is originally from Rhino Games, and this particular version is the Terran Games version, which I guess included some extra material that wasn't in the original. Now, I will point out that this game has, in fact, been redone as North Africa 41 from GMT. To my understanding, actually have it, but I haven't done anything with it yet. My understanding is that it does not use the Zachbond mechanic, which we will talk about in just a couple of minutes, because it is one of the signature mechanics of the Mark Simonich series, or family of games, if you like, that we'll start talking about in just a couple of minutes here. And everybody knows the games I'm talking about. But this does not have Zachbonds. And I would imagine that it doesn't have the Desperate Defense rule in it either, which is another one of the kind of key signature rules of Simonich's games. So, yeah, the new one is just North Africa 41. And then that's getting expanded with North Africa 40, and I think we're probably getting North Africa 42 as well. Expansion for the current GMT edition. So, and this, as actually you can see here, as Jeff Beeler points out, if you have the second edition from Terran Games, it's got the 40 to 42 campaign as opposed to just 1941. The first and second edition from Rhino Games only covered 1941. Let's turn that off. I actually had the heater running in here because it was chilly, because the air conditioning is blasting in this house right now. All right, so I don't have a lot to say about this. I haven't really looked much even at the reprint. You can see that it does not go for $1 bazillion, but it has just been reprinted relatively recently, so that is perhaps understandable. And Board Game Geek lists it as having been, this will become important later, lists it as having been re-implemented. Why? North Africa 41. Yeah, I thought this was super interesting too. Ardennes 2 is a significantly different game than the first one, it, as far as I can tell. I haven't actually played either version of SCS Ardennes, but I was like, oh, really? When I heard that the new one had Zachbonds in it. So Brent McCabe says it's hockey night tonight, so good for the hockey fans. Budget folks are here instead, so I appreciate that. And if you got hockey on in the background, I don't care. Oh, okay, so that's interesting. So Jeff Beeler said that parts of the map of the hexes don't have hex sides. I'm not positive what that means, but if you've got this old version, don't run this down. Get the new one. Carl says that Lee Forrester suggested Zachbonds to Dean, and indeed, I mean, as I can attest from having played Ardennes 44 for that particular topic, which is of course the Battle of the Bulge, Zachbonds work really well in that game. So, and this is, I'm not sure this is like a policy of Mark Simonich's that he doesn't do interviews. But I don't see many interviews with Mark Simonich. He's done at least 1 or 2 print interviews, I can tell you that. But maybe he's nervous on camera. Who knows? Some people will just lock up on camera. So, just the center dots in Legend begins to show really rough terrain. Well, the new one doesn't do that, I'm happy to report. That sounds awkward to me. So, and Neil Badkeep, this, and I like this quote, got the Legend Begins second edition, great straightforward game. That is true of all of these Simonich operational games, in my opinion, and really even of U.S. Civil War, which we'll also mention. But a lot of Simonich's design efforts have, now he's done a lot of graphics for other people's designs too, of course. But in terms of his personal design efforts, a lot of that seems to have gone into this family of games, which started ultimately, I guess, with The Legend Begins here. Mark, well, I can tell you what Board Game Geek has to say about it, which ain't much. Mark has been gaming since 1967. In 1991, he founded the Rhino Game Company and published 3 games, The Legend Begins, Campaign to Stalingrad, and Decision in France, all 3 of which are the first 3 here. And then he worked for Avalon Hill, designing Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, which we'll talk about, and Successors, and we'll talk about that as well. So a highly honored designer, and his games through GMT seem to sell extremely well because they tend not to stay in print for more than a little while. So, all right, so moving on from The Legend Begins. We'll eventually get to the ones I've played, and then I can talk about them a little more intelligently. Campaign to Stalingrad, Southern Russia, 1942. A game simulating the Russo-German War in Southern Russia from June to December 1942. And do we have an image of the entire map? Because that would be nice if we did. Kind of. Okay, so here's the map, and I think you can see over here, Rostov's going to be down here. I don't know. You can't see me pointing. Rostov's got to be down in this area down here. So, interestingly, I thought this was interesting anyway, because a lot of times... let me get to this in just a second. A lot of times, Board Game Geek will be very twitchy. We have very itchy trigger finger on the question of re-implementations. They will sometimes say, this game has been re-implemented by this other game, and then that other game turns out to be a completely unrelated thing that happens to use similar mechanics. They haven't done that with this one. So it seems to me that the sort of market niche of Campaign to Stalingrad here, again, published back in the day, 1992 by Rhino Games, has been sort of replaced, at least, by Stalingrad 42, which I have played. And then we have Decision in France. And as you can see, once again, Rhino Games, interesting cover. I wonder who did the cover. Might have been Mark, but it does kind of give me a bit of a Roger McGowan vibe, but I don't think it's Roger. And this says artist Mark Simonich, which doesn't mean a thing. So, well, it does, but Mark Herman says that Mark Simonich was, for all intents and purposes, the developer For the People, which I don't think I knew. So thanks, Mark, for that information. He is a tremendous talent, a complete package, if you will, capable of producing the entire game from counter art to rules to everything. And this is another one that I haven't played. We could see that the counters for 1992 Rhino Games look decent enough. And for that matter, the map doesn't look that bad. But I have not played this. And if we would like to say that this has been perhaps not re-implemented, but maybe replaced by a more modern design, then that more modern design is going to be Normandy 44. But this covers more of that campaign than Normandy 44 does. Normandy 44, I want to say, goes to the end of July of 44. This goes all the way to September. So, Brant, thanks for stopping by. Just catching up on the chat here. David Imperato says there are spaces with just center dots and no hex sides in North Africa. I'll have to look, to be honest. I haven't done very much with it. Maltov Cockatiel asked if Mark was doing maps before his 1991 game design. That's a good... Well, so if we go to Board Game Geek's selection, I'm pretty sure that the answer is yes. If we go to linked games, and we can go to artist... and then we can go to year released and go to the back, we'll first of all see a couple of things that haven't released yet. But the first things that we see, Fall of Rome, Battle for Germany, Battles for the Ardennes. This is Decision's version. So it does look like, I don't remember when Decision's version of the Ardennes quad came out, but Silver Bayonet, this could be the reprint too. It's not, though. So he's involved even prior to his emergence as a designer, and doing the art for his own games as well. So going quite a ways back. I'd have to dig into some of the SPI credits, to be completely honest. Marty says it only goes to the end of June. Does that sound right to me? It might. And I think this is actually correct. It actually does only go to the end of June. That is right. I think of Battle for Normandy, which goes to the end of July. And then if you got the expansion, it goes to like mid-August or something like that. So, Jeff Beeler says that Decision in France has more Canadians in it than Normandy 44. I'm actually reasonably sure that there are, in fact, the exact same number of Canadians in both games, but there may not be the same number of Canadian counters. We have talked a good deal about Mark Simonich's designs, but we have never done this. And nor have we particularly talked about these old things either. Fall of Rome. Well, we've talked about these too. I don't have a lot to say about any of that stuff, so we'll shuffle that away in the meantime. All right, now, however, we do have Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage. This was originally released by Avalon Hill. What is the date on that? 1996. Looking for a... There we go. All right, so this is the Avalon Hill cover. This is the version of this game that I have played. And it is an excellent game. All right. Dark Summer does go longer than Normandy 44. That is a Ted Racer design using a similar system to the one Ted used in the Dark Valley to cover the Russian front. So not a bad cover, in my opinion. And it's a solid game. So what this is it is a card-driven game using a pretty traditional Herman-esque card-driven mechanic. And in fact, let's see if we can do some cards. And this has been redone by Phalanx at least once, and I think 2 or 3 times, in this much fancier edition. I personally would be just as happy with the Avalon Hill version. It's a terrific game. So, and Mark consulted on Hannibal, which of course should also not surprise us, considering he's the fellow that came up with the mechanic in the first place. We also have the battle cards, which was something that was in We the People. Yes, We the People, and which has not been in a lot of the other card-driven games since then. But I liked it here, even though I absolutely could not get a good draw as Hannibal playing this game. I could not get good battle cards, so I ended up I won some of the battles anyway. But it's a terrific game. David Imperato says this was the first of Simonich's games that he played, and it's a really good game. Marty clarifies that there are still people playing this at WBC, which I have pictures of somewhere. We the Elephants. That's actually great. I like that. So battle cards were also in Randy Reed's 1776, and were an option in War and Peace that I think the General included, and the current version might have something, might have that option contained as well. I'm not a tremendous fan of the Papyrus font, only because it's a cool font. It's just been used an awful lot. Mark Herman says that the battle cards were only in We the People and then Hannibal and then no more. They are not in Washington's War, the current version of We the People. So, or the newer iteration of We the People. I've played this and I don't remember this at all. I have to tell you. Battle cards used in Caesar's Legion, which is another one that I haven't played. I've got Mark Ruggiero gave me a copy of Caesar's Legion, so I will be playing that at some point in tribute to Mark. So, and then here's the regular cards. You can see there are ops numbers in the upper left-hand corners, and then there are events that you can play either for the ops of the events, that exact same type of thing. And the Phalanx versions are indeed pretty handsome games. A lot of people really like 1999 Dawn of Freedom. I didn't like it, but I only played it the once. I have the 3 strikes rule. So I'm willing to try it again. I'm just not going to go buy it for the sake of that. So Mark has a story about this, so I'm going to let him tell it. Next up, this is 2000 now, Ukraine 43. Now, there's 2 different editions of this as well. Do they list these this way on Board Game Geek? Yes, they do. Okay, so they're listed here as 2 different versions of the same game rather than 2 different games, one a first edition and one a second edition. If you are going to run this down, you probably want the second edition because it's significantly different. I don't know in what ways it's different. This is one that I don't have and have never had. However, I will tell you that to some extent, and you can see we've got a decent chunk of game here. Now, at this point, we are fully into the Zachbond system. Okay, this game does have Zachbonds, as far as I'm aware. I would like to see a new edition of this, and I'm not sure why we haven't. I mean, I think he's right about this. It does add to playtime. So battle cards added time to the gameplay. Are we talking CNC commands? Yeah, commands and colors. Kind of. Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I'd have to give that a little bit more thought. There's a reprint on P500. Did I miss this somehow? I mean, stranger things have happened, right? Let's see. Ukraine 43 is on P500, and it has made the number and everything. How did I miss this? So third edition. So I guess the advice on Ukraine 43 now is more wait for the new one, since we'll probably get this, maybe not this year, but maybe next year. All right. Anyway. And you can see that some enterprising individual is selling it for $300 on Amazon, and here's 5 listings on eBay, all of which are north of $200 as well. And Noble Knight has a copy starting, well, we'll see what it actually looks like. $55. So there's a reason here, folks, that the first printing is going for $55 to $80. And the second printing is going for $225 to $300. It is more desirable. Marty says it could be a long wait, and I don't expect it to be out this year, to be honest. I think I'll be pleased if it's out next year. I will be unsurprised if it's out in 2027. Like the reprint of Ukraine 43, that is. I must have just forgotten about that. In any case, it is a well-regarded game, and I'd like to see it back in print. That would be nice. All right, so now we start to get into the ones I've played. Starting with Ardennes 44. This is a 2-map game of the Battle of the Bulge. It's at the regimental level. It's at the it's at the regimental level. Zoc bonds. 3. Yeah, I mean you can get this one for $43 plus shipping from GMT, plus whatever the tariff surcharge works out to be. Probably only a couple dollars. So this is a great example of when I personally will say, I'd like to have that game, but I'll just wait for the new one. I'm cool with that. That worked very well for me with Advanced Squad Leader and kept me from buying 50 million overpriced ASL things on the secondary market. There are some battalions, that's true, but it is a regimental scale game, as you will see. Plays really well. There's a kind of an interesting mechanic to handle traffic and road congestion problems, which is quite a bit, say, cleaner than the same mechanic that does that in Goss, for example. But completely solid game, in my opinion. Very playable. You could play this in, I think it's kind of a 2-day game, but you could totally play it in a weekend. That's not going to be a problem. And once again, this also has Zoc bonds. Now, what the Zoc bond, what does Board Game Geek have to say about the Zoc bonds? So basically, what the Zoc bond mechanic is it says that if there are 2 units, they exert zones of control. But if there's one empty hex between the 2 units that is not currently occupied by an enemy unit, then those 2 units supply a Zoc bond. And that hex, that empty middle hex, cannot be entered at all by enemy units. So you have to kind of pound your way through by attacking units rather than slipping through the zones of control. So not a lot here, but there are also other characteristic mechanics of that series, including things like the Desperate Defense or Desperation Defense or whatever it's called, or Determined Defense or Desperation Defense. And I like this too. And from experience, that is a thing that you need to learn how to do in these games is when to use Determined Defense and when to say, you know what, it is okay if I retreat here. Because you will end up in the grand scheme of things, you'll end up taking losses. What hexes do you want to fight for? If you fight Determined Defense on every hex, you will lose. I played the Germans in Normandy 44, which I've played several times. I played the Germans against an allied player who decided they were going to always determine defense, and they lost. So And it is. It can be hard to break through a line, but once you cut the opening, then you can start, stuff can start happening. So there are in fact stupid questions, but this wasn't one. So don't worry about it. So Ardennes 44, this has been through at least 3 printings with GMT. It's a great game, highly recommended. It's a meaty, chewy game, but it's not a monster game. It's 2 maps. You can play it in a weekend or at a convention or whatever and have a great time with this. If it doesn't say second, it's probably first. And you probably do want a later edition. At this point, I'll just wait for a new one. So I'm perfectly happy to do that. Next up is another out-of-print one that hasn't been reprinted as far as I'm aware, the Caucasus Campaign. Now this one, even though apparently there's a Japanese magazine edition from Command as well, which is interesting. I think this is this is a 1-map, 1.5 counter sheet game. It does have Zoc bonds, and it is, here's the entire map. So it's a pretty small game. And at one point, this was before we really kind of understood that this was, in fact, a family of games, because there was only a couple of them at this point. And at that point, it's just like a designer's mechanic that they've used more than once. In my opinion, I do not feel like I need the Caucasus Campaign because Stalingrad 42 covers this. So, and I've got that. So I'm good. Making me walk around. I hate walking around sometimes. Anyway, so this is another one that I feel like I don't particularly need. Noble Knight has one for 85. eBay's somebody on eBay selling one for 100. Prices on the Board Game Geek Marketplace are well under that, 65. Let's look at this 65. Laminated player aids. Sorry, I'm sorry. My sphincter just tightened reflexively when I heard laminated player aids. Like, ugh, I hate that. I hate laminated player aids and maps. Now, that said, I will sometimes myself make personal laminated, but I'm not like laminating the originals. I'm making copies and laminating those. That I don't care about. So the lamination itself is nice. Board Gaming Geezer, thanks for stopping by. Maybe. This is one of those things. So Marty says he loved the whiners who demanded a Baku map extension. So Baku was the major oil center on the Caspian for the Soviets, and it was a military target. But the fact is that the Germans didn't get that close to it. So you will find that on many of the games that cover this and related topics, that Baku is in fact not on the map because the Germans won't get close to it. And if they are about to, then it's probably something like a sudden death victory condition. I don't know, Perfidious Albion, I don't know if I would call Caucasus Campaign redundant, but it is certainly motivating me to not run a copy down now that I have Stalingrad 42. So solid looking game, good reputation, but but in my opinion, you should probably buy Stalingrad 42 because it has this and a bunch of other stuff in it as well. Considering that the secondary market wants basically new game prices, today's new game prices for copies of this. All right, here's another one. This is of the Simonich games. This is probably the one I've played the most, because I'm a big Normandy fan. Normandy 44. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is. Here's a fun picture. I've seen this picture before. So here is the entire map, and this is obviously a screenshot out of Vassal. It is a 1-map game. There is also a scenario expansion, alt history scenario expansion in an issue of C3I magazine that I also have. I have not played that. Yeah, exactly. They didn't get close to it. So Bert says that Noble Knight had a shrink wrapped Ardennes 44 for 150. I think it might be out of print at this exact moment. Austin says that Hannibal is still favorite game. Love the Valley Games edition and the Hannibal and Hamilcar one, which is one of the Phalanx ones. which does have like more material in it too, which is kind of nice, to be honest. And Hamilcar, as I recall, is the first Punic War sort of iteration of the game. I've never played the Hamilcar. I've only played the Evelyn Hill version, however. Dave, this is true. They are not at quite the same scale. It is a true statement that David Imperato is making. So it is not a direct replacement, but it's kind of a replacement that does pretty much the same thing. Stuart is clipping Normandy 44, and this will be his first Zachbond game. That's outstanding. I can sympathize with this as well. Excellent. Interesting game, but you need to pick one of the weather rules. I can actually vouch for that though. If you had a storm as the allied player, if you get storm weather, it's very bad. And if it happens a couple of times, then you have probably lost the game, because that's like entire turns where you get no replacements because everybody's still sitting in England because of the weather in the channel. So I kind of agree with Drew on this, that you probably should at least think about the weather rules, but I don't think you need to for your first game or two. So 3 in a row, and you can get mulberries destroyed. It's a bad situation if you keep rolling storm, and it can happen. It's not that rare for it to happen. So, but overall, outstanding game, in my opinion. It does only, and you can see here, somebody clarified that this only covers through the end of June, and you can in fact see that it ends on June 27th. But real solid game, and really good. In fact, let's see. All right, let's illustrate the Zachbond mechanic, actually, because we can do that with this. So right here, we have the resolution on this is not high enough for me to actually read the text. So we're going to call these 2 American airborne units, okay? But there's an empty hex between them. So these 2 units are exerting a Zachbond into this hex in the middle, and this German unit cannot move into that hex. It is blocked just as thoroughly as it would be if there was an actual allied unit in that hex. In a sense, then, the bond is actually a little stronger than the zones of control themselves. And Mike says, and we covered this, decision in France goes all the way to September. This totally does not. There was talk at one point about a Cobra expansion for this, but I have heard nothing about that anytime recently, and I would 100% buy such a product. So, this is actually true. I mean, there's Canadians on June 6th, right, at Juno. So all the Canadians are not there yet at the end of June, though. That is true. Yes, and in fact, let's see. Neil Badkey is pointing out, let's close this, is pointing out this image, which is in fact Normandy 44 compared in size to the Battle for Normandy. This is the original edition of the Battle for Normandy, of course. There is a mounted map available too for Normandy 44 if you want, but I'm perfectly fine with the paper map. Everything fits in one counter tray. It's very, very easy to deal with. Yeah, and this is true too. Zachbonds also block supply, which is correct. So as you can see, what does it look like? 5 maps for Battle for the Battle for Normandy, and the new version will have more than that, but we'll have about 7, maybe even 8. So this is not the Battle for Normandy with the expansion. It's just the core game. All right, so we can close out the books on the Battle for Normandy. I'm going to have to zoom back in on this. All right, next up is France 40. Now, this is the original edition of France 40, released in 2013, and it's basically 2 games, 2 kind of separate games, to be completely honest. This has 2 maps, and each game has its own map. So the first one is Sickle Cut, which is Guderian driving to the Channel, and then there is Dynamo, which covers the British at Dunkirk, their evacuation, and I wonder if we have images of the new maps. Now, this has been redone in a 2nd edition, which just came out like last year, I believe. I'd like to see images of the individual maps, but I'm not going to pour through the entire pile of stuff to do so. This is the second edition, and I still need this. I am probably going to pick this up at Origins, would be my guess. Because this is the only recent release in this family of games that I don't have already, and I probably want this one. I'm also interested in this campaign, and I'm curious to see how this plays. It is a tough topic to handle, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's 2 games in one, right? Now, I do think that there are some significant changes to the second edition of France 40, and there might be a new scenario that has been designed by Mark Merritt that combines both maps. So there's basically a campaign game in this too, where there wasn't in the original edition. All right, Joe Press, what he likes about this system is the combat result that disrupts the defender, which means they can't attack on the next turn. Both sides try to throw haymakers at each other's spearheads. Yeah, and I think that is kind of a cool dynamic to see work in actual play. Jeff Beeler got the mounted map because the original well, okay then, you get the new one. There you go. You're all good. Ferventus Albion still hasn't broken the shrink. Apparently it's out of print already, which is bad news for me. Let's see what... let me zoom out a little bit here again. I don't see a Noble Knight listing. $75 in new condition, which doesn't strike me as an absolutely crazy price. Hexy, thanks for stopping by. Mason Duke, Zoc bonds are designs for effect to account for hex grid distortion. Mark's OOB specialist Fred Thomas very succinctly outlines what they're meant to model on a few BGG threads. There you go. So I think that's true, but it also, reduces counter density, which I think is generally speaking, a desirable feature. Depends on the game, of course. Some games you just have to be fine with tons of counters, but not these, right? So Joseph Caparula says that he finds France 40 to be the most vanilla of the 4X games, but he's only done Sickle Cut. I haven't done either one, so you're ahead of me on this. Well, we'll try and rustle up a copy, folks. I am very resourceful when it comes to getting out of print stuff, so I've got options, but we'll see what happens. If I'm lucky, somebody will just have it at Origins and I will just buy it. So I'd be completely okay with that. I do still kind of like the older cover, to be honest, but it looks like an older cover, right? All right, next up is something completely different from Mr. Simonich, the U.S. Civil War. I've played this a couple of times as well. It is an excellent game. So, Mark, I'm going to jump on this and say that this game is not a remake of the classic victory games, Eric Lee Smith, The Civil War. That is a great game, too, and this is clearly inspired by it, but it is a different design in many respects. It is also much, much faster playing. You can play this in a day if you know what you're doing. Victory Games Civil War is a 20, 25, 30, 40-hour game, something like that. It'll take a whole weekend, whereas this you can play in, I think at 20 to 25 hours for Victory Games Civil War, to be completely honest. It's very clean playing. It does replicate some of the dynamics of the classic Victory Games Civil War, but that game is a classic for a reason. It's a brilliant design, right? So this is a fabulous game. It comes in a 3-inch box with 2 full-size mounted or close to full-size mounted maps. It is also pretty closely inspired by For the People. And apparently even the Europe and Asia in what are those called? Those block games for GMT? Europe Inflamed? That's not it. Europe Ablaze, something like, I keep thinking Europe in Flames, and that's not what it's called. It's something very similar though. Somebody will say so in the chat. And this is all in the designer's notes for U.S. Civil War. Now, there are multiple editions of this as engulfed. Thank you, Mike. Mike comes through yet again. Europe engulfed and Asia engulfed, and that is where the special action mechanic comes from. There is a deck of small cards along with the U.S. Civil War here, but it is not in any sense a card-driven game. You have an opposed die roll, and that determines the number of actions that you'll get to take, and all the cards represent are specific types of extra actions that you can choose when to take. It is a very good implementation of all of these mechanics. Now, that said, you do kind of owe it to yourself to be playing with the current rules. The first printing's rule book was a bit rough, particularly with regard to the naval rules, and especially particularly with regard to the advanced naval rules, which will give you back a certain amount of detail that you would be losing when moving from Victory Games Civil War to the U.S. Civil War. But it's a far cleaner design, too. But it's, we've got, Mark Simonich has the advantage of having 20 or 30 years or whatever it is, of additional design perspective, right? So there's that. Jeff Beeler says the U.S. Civil War is sort of a response. Yeah, I mean, it sort of is. So here's another thing. This is a good point that Jeff Beeler brings up. One of the things that people do not like about the U.S. Civil War, and I think it's understandable why people don't like it, is the leader rules. Because in this game, the leaders come in on a schedule. They get promoted on a schedule. They get shot in the back by their own men on a schedule. So they enter and get promoted and leave pretty much on the historical timetable. That was a conscious decision. This is in the designer's notes as well. And I respect Mark for making that decision. At the same time, I would kind of like to see and I'm okay with playing it that way. But I would also like to see an optional system with a more dynamic leader system that kind of like we had in the Victory Games Civil War. And for that matter, in things like War Between the States. Where leaders can get, and for the people, where leaders can actually get killed. I kind of like that. But I don't necessarily demand that for every play of the game. So I'm cool with the rule the way it is, but it would be nice to have an option. And I'm a little surprised that I haven't seen anybody create such an option. Most of the rules issues could be found from that original rulebook, could be found in the advanced naval rules. Other than that, we didn't play with the advanced naval rules that first time we played it. And the first time, you probably shouldn't. And the rulebook says this. You should probably play with the basic naval rules, and the basic naval rules are fine. There were significant issues with the advanced naval rules in the original printing. That has since been corrected. There's been at least 2 additional versions of this game's rules, and I think there's been a total of 3 printings total. And this is true, right? But this happened to me regardless. I mean, I wasn't playing this way. I would be so lucky as I got Grant killed instead of John C. Fremont or some other bozo that I could have just lost. There's ways to deal with this in a Victory Games Civil War, though, too. You just park those leaders in Cincinnati or someplace like that, where they're out of your way and they don't do anything. But that's a very artificial construct. I do like the way that works better for the people than in the Victory Games Civil War, because there's like a political cost to replace certain ranks of general if you don't do it exactly the right way. So Carl's dream is to devise a leadership resolution for games that isn't like Victory Games Civil War, or, that's how I'm taking this statement, or like GMT's U.S. Civil War. Since Cincinnati ain't that bad. Even Kentucky, I would not have said it this way 30 years ago probably, but I've since spent some time in Kentucky, and Kentucky is pretty much Southern Ohio, to be completely honest. The cultural differences between Kentucky and Southern Ohio are not that big. So, all right. Jeff Beeler says bad leaders are more useful in U.S. Civil War. There's also fewer leaders. You'll get a huge piles of leaders in games. In Victory Games Civil War and in War Between the States, you'll get a lot of leaders. But you need a lot of leaders, and some of them will be bozos, right? This is absolutely true. This is absolutely true that Perfidious Albion says that the leader schedule assumes that the war will be conducted historically. To some extent, this is true. As you play it, you won't necessarily follow the historical outcome, so the schedules should change. And I mean, yeah, you are building in the leader casualties and promotions in particular into the sort of railroad of the game, if you will. So that I think the game is not particularly railroady overall, but the leader mechanic can feel overly scripted. Again, if there was an optional rule for dynamic leaders, I would probably still play with the regular leaders on the schedule, probably 2/3 of the time. But it would be nice to have the option. For the People does. That's one of the things I like about For the People specifically. I don't believe they do here, but maybe I'm mixing that up. That's possible. All right, so moving on from U.S. Civil War. Well, you kind of do. In most Civil War games, you do end up using McClellan because for a while, he's one of the better guys that you've got. He's not as bad as like the worst of the Union leaders, like your John C. Fremonts and guys like that. But you don't have to put him in Army Command, and depending on the way that shakes out, he may never have an important command, but you will almost certainly find a use for McClellan somewhere. And that might be hanging out in West Virginia and preventing any Confederate incursions on the peninsula. Well, he was wrong, but he was exaggerating for dramatic effect. So now the game of Victory Game Civil War that I played was actually interesting because Grant got killed in the first battle that he was in. Robert E. Lee got killed at some point in like 1862, I think. So the leadership situation looked dramatically different, where the main leaders for the Union were Lyon and Sherman, and the South had Jackson because Jackson didn't get killed in that game. So Little Mac wasn't bad in West Virginia, that's true. And Robert E. Lee was when he was there, actually. Well, not permanently, he doesn't. You have the option as to when to create the armies, though, so you get to make that decision. So, and yeah, look at these designers' notes and the game is history section in Under Richmond 2, actually. After the first 3 months, yeah, it totally was. All right, so Holland 44. This is the Operation Market Garden game from 2017, and this was. I'm a big Market Garden fan too. In fact, I'm kind of a fan of a lot of the Western Front stuff, to be honest. Although I still play plenty of Eastern Front games. Holland 44 is like a map and a half, give or take just a little bit. It's got one full-size map and one map that's about half size, but you don't use all half of it. You use about a third. It's about a map and a third, in other words. So it is a long map. Let's see if we can find a picture of that. That would be nice. This is an excellent game. I have played it a couple of times, easily playable in a long sitting. Here is the map, and you can probably can't really tell, but that's about a map and a quarter. It's like one extra set of panels or something like that. Well, he ran, which took some cheek, I got to tell you. So, standard Zockbond rules. I believe we do have Desperate Defense in this game. They don't all have that, and this is about a counter sheet. It's 2 counter sheets, but the counters are a little oversized too. These are 9/16" counters. And I've personally played this in an afternoon, and you can totally do that if you know what you're doing. It's also easy. It's one of the, if it weren't for Salerno, I was pointing people at this because this was it's not quite the smallest. It's not really that small, but it's pretty easy to manage Holland 44. And it's a little closer to Ardennes 44 than Normandy 44 is. I have won this game playing both sides, actually. Won it as the Germans and I won it as the Allies. And the other game I played, I think, as the Allies and lost. So this can happen. I can tell you that this can happen. But it does take, the Germans are under a lot of pressure to hold in specific places, right? So I will agree with Molotov Cockatiel that a lot of people do hold this pretty highly over the rest of the series, or family, if you like. Mason Duke, Holland 44 was entry point to wargaming back in 2020. I think it's hard to beat, right? As these are all, none of them are like extraordinarily simple. They're not like baby's first war game simple, right? So I don't always recommend them as first war games, but as second war games, I think most people could probably handle them if they're playing with somebody else that knows what they're doing. Well, we'll never know, right? We might have had a very different Western theater if he had sent McClellan west, but that wasn't where the politics demanded, right? The politics demanded drives on Richmond, so... And McClellan was a relentless self-promoter, too, so... And it was always somebody else's fault whenever McClellan fell down. So you could see it's not an enormous game. Easy to play, easy to handle, easily playable in a long sitting. Stacking Limit says Holland 44 is one of his favorite games, which I can totally understand. All right, so this is the more recent version of Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage from Phalanx in this case, and this includes the Hamilcar thing. I'm not going to try and find... We've managed to somehow close a tab incorrectly and has somehow managed to not talk about Successors. So let's talk about that. Successors. All right, so this has been through at least 4 editions. Okay, this is the GMT version. Now the credits here are Mark Simonich and Richard Berg. And this it credits John Fearer as well. I think this is almost entirely a Simonich design, and I think the story is that he spoke to Berg, and Berg says, "Yeah, sure, you can use that mechanic. Just credit me," and that's why Berg is credited on this. So, yeah, you should play these, Stigler. They're really good. And they all have vassal modules. They all play cleanly. They all have good vassal modules, and they all play cleanly. Successors is one that I have not played. So what I'm actually looking for is the Avalon Hill version, which is this one, which is one of these weird Avalon Hill landscape format boxes. This is a weird choice that somebody made at Avalon Hill at some point. And it is a multiplayer game. This is the Cyberboard board. And you can see, here we are, some youngsters playing on the old version. It's a point-to-point map. It is broadly kind of similar to Rome versus Carthage, except the big difference is it's I'm trying to... All right, hold on a second here. Let's look at this version, because this is the one that will have the components that will make sense as I describe them. Okay, so if you have played the Napoleonic Wars or Kutuzov or Wellington or any of these other point-to-point card-driven games that GMT has done a million of at this point, you will find this very familiar. The big difference is it's multiplayer. You are playing one of the successors to Alexander. Alexander has now died, and his successors are fighting over the remnants of his empire. And you can see you got 4 different factions, right, or at least 3 different factions right on the map here. Even the old maps are pretty handsome, in my opinion. But the new one from Phalanx is this map. And I do think this is nicer than the old maps, but the old maps are nice too. Definitely a nice map. This is way after Kingmaker, I can tell you that. But there is, one can draw a lot of pretty broad comparisons between this and Kingmaker, I think, that might be interesting, but I'd have to think about that. And I've never played Kingmaker or this. So Stacking Limits says it's a magnificent multiplayer game. It's a very highly regarded game. And frankly, if it wasn't multiplayer, which really does limit its ability to get played as often as it otherwise might, I would probably have picked this up. I am kind of in the market for an Avalon Hill copy of Rome versus Carthage, Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, to be honest. Earlier in terms of historical... Okay, that's definitely true. Absolutely. Stuart says it's also playable in an afternoon, which is great. That is great. Kingmaker, yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. And of course, the component quality, I'm trying to find something that shows that up. The component quality for the Phalanx stuff, as is almost always the case with Phalanx that I've seen, then the component quality is really high with the Phalanx version. And of course, you don't get the little plastic miniatures with the other versions, but you do with the Phalanx version. And if you're gonna buy it, might as well get the nice one at this point, I figure. We'll see. I don't know that I'd say few. So first of all, before I get to this question, Jeff Beeler, I'm going to put you off until we hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsors of the Counterclipping Show, because we're a little bit late with this particular spot. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, big thanks and shout out to Noble Knight, the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show, and don't forget about the affiliate link in the video description. All right, so Jeff Beeler asks, is Successors one of the few multiplayer war games? I wouldn't, so I mean something really specific when I say multiplayer, at least in reference to this, which means that it is multiplayer. There are no teams built into the game. Teams may emerge in play, and they may hold up or they may not. So this is a multiplayer game in that sense. And games like that aren't that rare in war games, but they're not super common either. Other examples would be things like the Napoleonic Wars, for example, or Here I Stand, or Virgin Queen, or now Tanto Manta. Those are all multiplayer in the same sense that Successors is. But that's not to say that it is not trivially easy in many, many, many cases to play a war game, a lot of war games with more than two people. That's our routine style of playing, where it's usually teams, right? Usually teams of two, but teams of three can work. So, yes, do like the video. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, so Stuart says that the Phalanx edition is very pretty, but the miniatures are hard to read unless they're painted. I think that is completely understandable. I would probably play with the standees for this exact reason until such time as the miniatures are painted. And since I can't paint them myself, I'll have to pay somebody to do that. Marty skipped the Phalanx version because he doesn't need 3 times as big. It is a big box. I can tell you that. So Burning Banners is another one. Burning Banners is scenarios though, so you can play it with less people than 6. This is another one that I need to get, to be completely honest. All right, so moving on from Successors to 2019's Stalingrad 42. This is a substantial game. I'm remembering it. So this says 4 maps, but 2 are full size, 2 are half size. So it is the space of 3 maps. And hopefully we'll have a good picture of what it looks like set up. In fact, here it is. Yeah, pretty much. This is pretty much it. So you got 2 maps and then 2 smaller maps that is the Caucasus area that's down on the bottom. So it's a good-sized game. It is the biggest of the Simonich Zockbond games, at least up to this point. And furthermore, there is an expansion, this Little Saturn and Winter Storm expansion, which basically gives you some extra stuff and some new scenarios. There is not a map extension, and I don't know that this game needs it. It covers a huge map area on its own. If we get, I would love to see, here we go. All right, so if you just look at this, I'm not going to zoom all the way in because I just want people to look at this map and then mentally compare this to Case Blue. And I'm talking the Case Blue part of Case Blue rather than the Enemy at the Gates part. Well, really both parts of Case Blue, to be completely honest. This covers a lot of the action that you would see in Case Blue, right? The drive on Stalingrad, the encirclement at Stalingrad, the battles for the Caucasus, all that stuff. So there's a lot of game here, and it's using what are at this point time-tested rules. I'd like to get that. I am here, and Mark, thanks for stopping by. I have heard nothing but good stuff about Burning Banners, and really would like to try it. And a local buddy has a copy, so I will probably get to actually try it at some point without waiting too much longer. James Whitmer is setting up Stalingrad 42. Which is cool. And Stigler needs to get to this. I agree, Stigler. I think you need to get to this. This is, it's East Front rather than West Front or Med Front, which is a lot of the other games in the sequence. So that's nice because I like East Front stuff. And it's just a rock solid game. This entire family of games. Look, one of the reasons I did this topic tonight is just kind of to take a look at sort of the breadth of Simonich's designs. But you realize that like a lot of his design work has orbited, not absolutely everything, but a lot of it has orbited around this family of games that have Zockbonds in them, even if 1 or 2 of them don't have Zockbonds. And you know what? I think that's working. I think that's working out okay. Here is, are they playing this double blind? Yeah, well, they're playing it 2 of them, so I guess that's cool, but we don't need to worry about that. As I mentioned, there is an expansion for this, Little Saturn and Winter Storm, that adds, I think, a half counter sheet, and an updated rule book, and some updated player aid cards, and some additional scenarios. All right, Perigee just bought a discounted version queen because there's a small tear. Now just missing the 5 other masochists. I understand. I like Version Queen when I played it. It's a solid game. And it's a little more flexible than Here I Stand, too. All right, Mike and Jen Simon. Stalingrad 42 is a great game. Must have played it 12 plus times. I haven't played it that much. I played it once, but it is a rock solid game. You don't have to call them anything. You call them Zones of Control every time if you want, but other people will call them Zocs. So you're going to have to you're going to have to live with that grief. So Agray Day says Burning Banners is great. Zock it to me, Sean Sullivan. Good one. So rock solid game over here. Here is a much more recent release and aligned along the tradition of Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage rather than the Zockbond stuff on the hex maps. And this is Caesar, Rome versus Gaul. This came out, last year, 2 years ago? 2020. So, Jesus, 5 years ago now. Anyway, here's the whole map. And this is what it sounds like. It's Caesar and Gaul. Okay, and you got Romans down here and Gauls up here. And it's point-to-point card-driven. Other than that, I don't have this and haven't played it. So, I can't really say anything about it. It did seem to me... It's got a very good rating on BGG. It seems to me that it's a game that not that many people are talking about, and I'm not really sure why that is. It's rated well. It was well received. I'm pretty sure it's out of print. So apparently there's an update kit coming. So wait for new version. Plausible. I'm always happy to wait for the new version because that means that's money I don't have to spend today. And sometimes that does mean that years later I have to go back and get the old one because no new version ever came out. But Yeah, but the reprints probably won't happen soon, but that's typical for GMT reprints. So, and this is a 2-player game, and as you can see, the counters are real nice too. So, haven't done anything with this one, and don't own it. I'm not crazy about the cover, but I think the biggest reason is this does not look like Julius Caesar to me. And in fact, it appears that whoever this is has some kind of dislocated shoulder issue that looks goddamn uncomfortable. So there's that. But I'm not crazy. Illustration by Paweł Kurowski. Not crazy about this image. But that is not a serious complaint, to be honest. And Brian Jarvis, Ardennes 2 does have Zachbons in it. We have actually talked about that. Okay, Marty says that this is a nice throwback and that it plays fast. It's not bloated like later CDG designs. That's certainly true of some CDG designs. But that's generally true in our hobby is bloat is a thing that we have to deal with. So... All right. So actually, Perfidious Albion is 100% right here. Also, don't forget that the actual numbers of troops on the fronts during Operation Barbarossa, the Germans outnumbered the Soviets until sometime in 42, as I recall. So I don't think this is AI. I think it's just one of those things where it's weird. That is I got that. I could picture the dude right in my head, and I can't think of his name. He's been in Ciaran Hinds. There we go. Thank you. And that is a great series. As Agri Day points out, is a great series. If you look at the busts of Caesar, then I think most people will end up agreeing with me that the perfect choice to play Caesar is Patrick Stewart. Now, Patrick Stewart might be too old nowadays. That is true. So, all right. Anyway, moving on from Caesar Rome versus Gaul, we are on to Salerno 43. I have played this once. This is the smallest of the Zachbond games. It is on roughly a half-sized map and has only one sheet of counters. So, at the moment, this would be the natural first game in the series for at least some types of wargamers, but unfortunately, it too is out of print now. The sequel to it, which will be linkable with it, Italy 43, is coming, and it is on GMT, and we will actually see it in a moment here. This is the Salerno landings in 1943 in Italy, and the battles that took place around those landings. Here we have North Africa 41. This is also, you can see the unusual footprint of the map. It is a 2-map game, but it's not quite as big as 2 full maps laid short end to short end. I probably ought to play this, to be completely honest. I'm very curious about it now that I've spent what feels like half the night talking about it. So, yes, he does. That is a terrible show. It does look a little like John Saxon. I actually will agree with Molotov Cocktail on that. Ciaran Hinds did play Mance Rayder in Game of Thrones. He was in that movie about the guys who got stuck in the ice. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's been in a lot of stuff. And he is unfortunately in the dark, in Rings of Power as well. James Purefoy I really like James Purefoy in that role specifically, actually. And yeah, I think that is the best Mark Antony that we have ever seen by anybody. Much better than Richard Burton, in my opinion. There's an expansion, North Africa 40 coming for North Africa 41, and I think they might be a 42 in cooking as well. John Carter did have Ciaran Hinds as... I forget who James Purefoy played, but Ciaran Hinds played Tardos Mors, the Jedak of Helium. And James Purefoy plays Kantos Kan, who's like John Carter's buddy. And he's great. He's really great. He's much better than Taylor, whatever his name is, that played John Carter, who was the only real problem I had with the movie is that guy. I didn't really like him. All right. So the Italy 43, Fred, thanks for stopping by, says that Italy 43 map has entry areas, so it won't link perfectly to Salerno. Mark wants to link after all 3 games are published. I can live with that. I think, honestly, I'm not, maybe it would. I think, to be completely truthful, though, the real reason is that this is a reimagining of The Legend Begins, and that didn't have Zachbans in it yet, and apparently Mark working on this again, and it's a substantial revision of the original. I really liked, for the record, Willem Dafoe as Tarsarchus too. But I think we might be seeing a North Africa 42 as well. It's not too full size. Just bear in mind, it's not 2 full size maps. It's about a map and a quarter, and there is an off map display or 2 as well. So, all right, and then here is North Africa 40, the expansion. So this is going to have September 1940 to December 1941. So overlap. Scenarios cover both Italian invasion of Egypt and Operation Compass. Both scenarios can be extended into full campaigns, which is actually pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So I'll end up picking this up too, I'm positive. We're not quite late enough into the show for me to diverge and start talking about TV. But on the other hand, we only have one more game to talk about, which is the forthcoming Italy 43 from Mark Simonich. And this one is still not quite full-size map, but it's a bigger map than we got in the other one. One counter sheet and assorted stuff. So it's also going to be fairly small. I am more interested in like the campaign than in these individual smaller games. But if this is how it's going to get published, fine. There's few enough games on the mainland Italy campaign that I can afford to be that choosy about it. 4 scenarios across the Volturno, the Barabara line, the Mignano Gap, and the full campaign game. So good amount of play value in this as well. So that is the topic for the evening. But we are not yet signing off. Go back here. All right. So let's get into the chat here a little bit. This might be justified. I'd have to think harder about this and probably play the game, but this might be part of the reason why there are no Zachbans in North Africa 41. Meandering Mike says Friday Night Lights was good. I have heard that. I never watched it. Perfidious Albion says Disney should get off their butts and continue with John Carter. I liked the movie and would have been happy to see a sequel, and they set up sequels, and they were talking about sequels, and it just became a political hot potato at Disney where it was like the old regime was forced out, the old regime greenlit the movie, and the new regime has to do everything it can to sabotage everything the old regime did to make themselves look better. So that is fairly typical Hollywood politics bullshit. And it was mismarketed. I think generally I didn't like Taylor Kitsch particularly, but otherwise I thought the movie was very good. It needed to update the material, which remember began to get published in something like 1912. So it is very old material and needed a bit of an update, and I thought they did a responsible job with it. All right. Fred says that North Africa 41 is about the same map scale as Stalingrad 42, but it's brigades instead of divisions, so Zachbans would be too powerful. That makes sense to me. A lot of your game, any game, not just these, is going to be informed by your choice of scales. That's the turn scale, the map scale, and the unit scale. I would love to see a Tunisia 43 game. I would like to see an Invasion of Sicily game from Mark in this series. That would be great. Expansion, as is, you need North Africa 41 to play it. Albion's talking about the licensing for the John Carter. So the early John Carter stuff's in the public domain. So They are not necessarily dependent on that. The Burroughs estate has been known to be extremely litigious, but if there's some of it's in the public domain, now you got to be careful with that. And that doesn't mean you can't get sued. You can't get sued. You can still get sued, but Disney's got lawyers too, or whoever. Hollywood in general has lawyers. North Africa 40 this year, I think so. I think it's pretty close, as I recall, but I might be misremembering that. And this is a really strong body of work. The subtitle on the thumbnail is The Best and the Rest, but the rest is real strong, right? The rest is really just those early Simonich games where he's kind of still developing some of the ideas, and we have seen more recent takes from him on those topics. And those are all super solid games. So, and I didn't mention this because I didn't pull it up. That's, you know what? Hold on a second. That actually should come up right here. Königgrätz 66. This just landed on P500 in the last month or two. This is I almost said Franco-Prussian. It is Austro-Prussian War. And I don't know if it has Zachbons or not, but I thought that it did. The counters look fantastic. No problem with this at all. We got some Prussians as well. And this is a Simonich design. I don't know if it said this would have Zachbons, though. I'm not sure it's problematic if it doesn't. But that is a signature Simonich mechanic. So this is the newest Simonich game to actually be available for pre-order right here. And it has done pretty good traffic considering that it has only been on P500 for a couple of weeks. So, this is really... I'm almost certainly going to buy this. I think it's a no-brainer to buy this. I don't have a lot on the Austro-Prussian War. I don't have nothing, but I don't have a lot. And this does kind of give me more of an operational treatment of the battle, which I kind of like. So, did anybody... I don't track what Disney does. I mean, I watch the Marvel stuff. I don't really pay attention to whatever nonsense they're doing with live action stuff. So, yeah, Herman did a game on this too. That's a good point. Good point. Those are trademarks rather than copyrights. So that trademarks work differently. So actually, that's not that weird. That would create problems. This is true. I think the director was known for animated work, and I also didn't particularly like the Civil War flavored opening. I thought that could have been better. It was played very laughy in a way that I wasn't totally crazy about. So I don't think we will be seeing this. I haven't. I'm curious. I mean, I heard the Chaosium news that Mike Merles left Chaosium, but it's still going to be working with them on a quote unquote new edition of RuneQuest. New edition. Okay, I need more information on new edition of RuneQuest. So, all right. Perfidis Albi says it would be interesting to use the North Africa 41 map is the Italian campaign into Egypt. Well, that's North Africa 40. That is explicitly included in North Africa 40. Michael Pincus says there are no Zachbons in Königgrätz, which might make sense. I'd have to think about it a little more. There are some... None of the leadership changes felt to me like huge shakeups. Mike Merle's leaving was like the most important piece of that news, but he's still doing stuff. So, this is true, but he was asking for it in I, Claudius, to be honest. So Janus was a real piece of work. So, Italian campaign can include the East Africa campaign as well. I'd be interested potentially in that. There's some interesting things going on in there. This is we have kind of said this, but let's remember that Simonich has also done a lot of graphics work for other designers as well. But this is the designer spotlight, not the artist spotlight. You know, a lot of traffic happens in Belgium. As I will agree with that, and part of that is because going back to the Middle Ages, it's one of the most densely populated places on the planet, and it has been for like a long time. Having done some research on um, medieval demographics, that the Low Countries in general have a really high population density all throughout that period, and that's not different now. There's a reason why they needed to reclaim land from the sea. So there is the RPG from Modifius that's still floating around. Oh, I have heard about this video. This is the Star Wars experience or whatever it's called that you can go to down at somewhere in Florida. I got a buddy who's been there like 3 times. He's had a great time. It does sound like a really more expensive than I wanna deal with, to be honest. And this is a YouTube video that somebody did. I have not watched the video because 4 hours. I have enjoyed a number of the Marvel movies. They are not all equally good, however. I don't know what this means, but I wouldn't necessarily object to a little bit of streamlining. What I would prefer to see a little more if they're going to do a new edition is, I heard about this as like new starter set, which is like a completely different question. They're actually working on a new edition. This is also true. Until pretty recently, I think, but it might not have been that recently. I mean, the rules changes to the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu are really not that big. They kind of redid the way stats work, and they changed some rolls around, and that's basically it. As far as major changes, I could live with that. Okay. All right, so Craig Alexander says that the new edition of RuneQuest is just covering Pavis and Big Rubble and a bit of tink. Well, that's cool because I have all that material. And a bit of tinkering with rules to streamline, but very modest changes. Okay. Okay. I will be curious to see it. Let me put it that way. This might be different than my buddy went to be honest. That's like the whole Star Wars experience, Galaxy's Edge or something like that. I mean, it is pretty obvious the Marvel's getting stale, to be fair. So I should probably watch this. You would think. You would think. They do have a new Vikings RPG, which I'm also not like incredibly excited about. I have played, so there have been Viking RPGs in the past, including a set for RuneQuest 3rd edition and RuneQuest one or maybe both of the Mongoose editions. So that to me, that's what this smells like. I'm not incredibly excited about another Vikings game because there have been some really good ones. There's a game called Sagas of Icelanders that I have actually played, and it was a very, very good game. There's another one that's called like Ragnarok of the Norns or something like that, and I've looked at that and it's gorgeous. Yeah, this is an absolutely not price. It was obscenely expensive, and that is probably a big part of the reason why it is no longer among the living. Caesar Rome versus Gaul is featured in GMT's first solo play system by Stuka Joe. Yes, that's true. Thomas Harrison, thank you. So the Caesar Rome versus Gaul is one of the games that is officially supported using the CDG solitaire system that was pioneered by Stuka Joe, in which I believe there've been 2 like official pack releases for it so far. So yeah, it is Galaxy's. Thinking about it, it is Galaxy's Edge that I am thinking of. And it looks neat. I wouldn't mind going, but it's like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I would like to go see, and it's on the list, but it isn't at the top. This is about the documentary. While she was editing it, the hotel closed. How about that? Viking war games, there's been a couple. I'd have to think a little harder about it because a lot of the sort of Viking themed games that have come out in the last, say, 10 or 15 years have in fact been more general board games or Euros or whatever. You can totally do this. Oh, shoot! There is a thing that there was an important piece of news that I forgot because it wasn't on the list. Let us find it. Here we go. This is a new Kickstarter from Colombia Games. The limited edition deluxe war map vault from Colombia Games. So what this is, and the way this works, is you back the project for $1, and then you can buy the giant neoprene mats for pretty much every game they make. So you want and those are all $99. So it's $100 basically for a map plus shipping, which is the shipping rates are at the bottom. So this is all their war games: Alliance, Athens and Sparta, Bobby Lee, Borodino, Crusader Rex. I don't see Sam Grant, so I didn't guess no. I guess Grant's out of luck. The East Front series. This is enormous, by the way. Gettysburg, and this is not the vinyl. This is the neoprene, the mouse pad material. Ooh. I'll talk about this in a minute, as soon as we get this taken care of. But so you can look at this. I'll put this a link to this in the chat as well, if anybody wants to hop over and look at this. But if I mean, certainly for both Alliance and Eurofront, it's a lot cooler to play on the big maps. If you go all the here we do have about and you could get the games too, but all the way at the bottom. Oh, God. It's all 4 of them. Shit. All right. Well, there's the Harn map. This is the one I backed it for. The Avinia map, the Shorkeen map, and the Truzen map. And I'm not spending $400 right now. So I'm going to have to just deal with only having the Harn one. It'll be okay. You can also get... this has been updated since I looked at it like yesterday. You can get a kit that has blocks if you want to like try and design your own Harnick war games. So I am in for just the Harn neoprene mat itself. It is 44 by 68, which is enormous, and it's probably going to end up living on the wall, would be my guess. So, man, I tell you what, the Avinia, Shorkeen, and Truzen are tempting though, but I've never run games outside of Harn with maybe the occasional excursion to Avinia or Shorkeen. So I will live with just the Harn one, to be honest. So, all right. With that out of the way, let's back up. We've got a few minutes here, folks. Agre Day mentions a game called Wolfwald, which is right here. It is a European game. It is not a Viking game. It is based on Anglo-Saxon myth and legend, which I am actually super into. And it is a D&D clone. It's an old school type of thing. But it is one of the more interesting ones, and it's in these cute little booklets, and there's like 5 of them, and it's a pretty interesting game. I got it for the Anglo-Saxon connection, and not necessarily because I intend to actually run or play it. But it is pretty cool. Perry Sparopoulos says that the last few scenario books from Chaosium for COC have underperformed. They need to put out another World Buster campaign. What I would really like to see them do is for them to redo Beyond the Mountains of Madness for the current 7th edition. All right. Yeah, no, I got this too. And I really wanted the Alliance neoprene mat because I've seen it. It's really nice, and it's a lot less congested. But unfortunately, they're out of them, so we will not be getting one between now and Origins when I actually need it. Fire and Axe from Asmodee. I think I've seen this game. Wouldn't call it a war game, but hey, I don't know. Doing the RPG with with Benjamin Bagby. He's on YouTube. 878 Vikings is one of the games from Academy games. I haven't played this one, but I have played 1775 Rebellion, and I actually liked it. I've seen this, actually, but this is different case blue. Different case blue. Press Dogs Vikings, that's true. There have been a few, not that many. Yeah, we mentioned this earlier. Drop Zone Chef DuPont from Multiman is now available for pre-order, and it's pretty inexpensive. I am passing on it, personally. It's not, but it's trivial to, so it is available as a print-on-demand volume from Chaosium, and in fact, that is the version that I have. I'm not sure this is print-on-demand, but I think you can get this in print-on-demand. And it's a pretty neat campaign. It is about an Antarctic expedition that finds some horrible stuff in Antarctica. So it is pretty cool. It is not for the 7th edition, but converting from previous editions of Call of Cthulhu to 7th edition is trivial. So it's not, but there's that. They could also redo, I wouldn't mind seeing them redo and expand Trail of Tsathoggua. They don't need to expand Horror on the Orient Express again, because that they already did. That I have in this giant format. It is a huge box set, and I'm not going to open it because it is very difficult to get it all back in here. Like, this much of this thing from here to like here is books, thick books. And like the last quarter inch or half inch is props. And they kind of went all out for the day on the props. So I got to tell you, though, one of the reasons, if they're finding that their stuff is maybe selling less than they think it should be, maybe they should think about having hired Mike Merles as a potential cause for that occurring. So yeah, I got that on deep discount from Cool Stuff at Origins, back when Cool Stuff used to both come to Origins and actually sell games. So I've got, I'm not going to pull more stuff off the shelf, but I could pull more prop stuff off the shelf. I've got the prop sets from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society for Masks of Nyarlathotep and for like the classic set, which is pretty much the reprint that they did a couple of years ago. All right, so I don't know if the other Harn-mounted maps were available. So I'm normally cool with just playing on the regular maps. That to me, that's not much of a problem. But on the other hand, for the Harn, if I'm going to run Harn again, right? And it would be awesome to just roll out this 4x6 foot friggin' map that's like the size of the table to as the the foundation for the game. And hey, I've got extra blocks. I could that's not much of a problem. Favorite Lovecraft story. Shadow over Innsmouth is interesting and for a number of reasons, and it is one of the better remembered ones. I'd probably one of my favorites that I don't hear talked about very often is The Whisperer in Darkness. That's the one where the guy's getting these like recordings on old wax cylinders about some dude who lives out in the woods, and he keeps getting these dogs because the Migo are kidnapping the dogs and stuff. It's a pretty cool story. So, John MC, I hope you're feeling better, man. That's not okay. Well, I don't know that we're doing this. Seth is way more of a costume guy than me, so I'm not sure we're doing that. So yeah, John MC, absolutely take care, and thanks for stopping by, but get well, man. Pandemic Call of Cthulhu, that probably would be fun. I could see that being fun. The Shadow Out of Time is good. That's a good one. The Mountains of Madness is good. The Call of Cthulhu itself is good. Probably the Call of Cthulhu is kind of a big because it's lent its name to a bunch of stuff. But I do think the Dunwich Horror is also good. So And Call of Cthulhu is, I will do like content for Call of Cthulhu. I'm not going to try and do what Seth does. Everybody's got to have their own channel, right? I mean, I'm not going to try and copy any other channel. It's going to be my RPG channel. So we'll see what that turns into. That will also mark my return as like a full-time, to whatever extent the term full-time means, to full-time game mastering too. So Shadows of Yog-Sothoth would be another good one too. Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath is sort of, yeah, it's different. It's like more it's more of a take on Dunsany than most of Lovecraft's other stuff, and I didn't really feel like it worked particularly well, if you ask me. I've got the Arkham House volumes of every published thing Lovecraft ever wrote, including the things that he ghost wrote for other people, one of whom was actually Harry Houdini. He ghost wrote a story for Harry Houdini. So I do have the Dreamlands book for Call of Cthulhu, but I was like, hey, look at this. It's $10. Cool. I'll buy it. It was on sale somewhere. So Pocket String, on the other hand, likes the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. It is different. So somebody not liking his other stuff, but liking that, I can understand that. Out of the Aeons was a good one of the collaborations. I forget who he wrote that with. Yeah, I mean, cool. I think this is great because I don't buy anything from Asmodee, and I don't plan to buy anything from Asmodee. Not for any boycott. I just don't like the games that Asmodee does. And if Mike Murals wants to produce games I don't like, cool. I don't have to buy his stuff. Sweet. Chaosium, on the other hand, I do buy a lot of stuff from, and I would just as soon not have that anchor around their neck. So now I do need the new version of the Great Rifts, the Great Rift set, but I do have the old one. There's a video on it. It's actually done pretty well. And yeah, you'll see Traveler stuff on the new channel. That's safe to assume. That said, the thing I'm working on is still Pathfinder. So, yeah, I saw this movie starring Dean Stockwell and Sandra Dee, and I think Ed Begley Sr. was my first exposure to Lovecraft. Actually, I probably saw this when I was like something like 10 or 12 years old. So I have not read a lot of this kind of thing, to be honest. So, and I like I said, I don't know, I'll have to find news on this. This is kind of the problem, is if you're not like on their Discord or something. I probably am on their Discord, but if you're not, then you can lose track of this stuff very easily, and that's kind of annoying. Excellent. All right, so folks, we are going to wrap the show up about 3 minutes early tonight, because I've got one or two quick things that I'm going to go do before finishing up my evening here. I have actually seen this. It is pretty good. I really liked that first season of True Detective, and I liked the second season of True Detective. It just isn't nearly as good as the first one. The third one I didn't finish watching. It seemed very good, however. The two Lovecraft detective movies. You talk about the one with Fred Ward, and I think there might have been a second one as well. Cast a Deadly Spell was the one with Fred Ward. I liked Fred Ward a lot, by the way. So, Alistair Logie, thanks for stopping by. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by, and we're going to wrap this up just a couple of minutes early, although you might get 2 minutes of air out of me anyway. So, there might be another video this week. We'll see, but the big effort right now is going into finishing the Charles S. Roberts Awards thing. So that is going to be the top priority at the moment. So don't be shocked if you don't, in fact, see another one this week. Did I put the ticker up at all? Possibly not. So, but in the meantime, we will be back on Sunday night with the Chit Show with our special guest, Steve Fratt, who we will try not to bone this week. And we will be back next week on this show. And next week's show is, in fact, going to be the Origins preview episode. So stay tuned for that. We will be at Origins. That starts on the 18th. So on the 16th, we're going to do our Origins preview show, and we'll do the following week, too. I'll have like a secondary topic for next week as well, because I don't have an hour worth of material to talk about. But we will go over the events and stuff like that, the wargaming adjacent events that are happening at Origins. And then we'll do the show review the week after that, and then we will be back to our normally scheduled programming at that point. Yes, it totally is. All right, folks, everybody have a great rest of the night. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you all again soon.